Welcome to this Photoshop training tutorial. In this particular session we're going to look at the type capabilities of Photoshop and some of the things that we can do with type once we've got it set. Now I've selected my type tool over here. If I click and keep my finger down, there are various different versions of the type tool. I'm going to go for some plain old horizontal type, but you can also set vertical type, or you can set type that just makes a selection without a fill. I'm just going to set some standard type. I'm going to click into the middle of the screen to set my cursor, and because I want my type to be centered is from the little control strip at the top that's all changed to reflect all the type options. I'm just going to click centered and then just going to type in my little headline, which is going to be Switzerland 2005, and then do a return and then holidays from hell. Now it's set the type in my default foreground color that I had selected, but if I then drag over my type, I can choose a quick way of changing the color is just to click onto here, and I'm just going to set some slightly whitish type. I'm going to use Apple and plus to zoom in slightly, or Control and plus on Windows. If I then change to my layer moving tool, we'll just have a quick look at our layers palette, and you'll see that the type has created an independent layer sitting above the background image. At the moment, the type is still type, i.e. it's editable type. So I have options to move the type around. I could use the arrows on the keypad, which would allow me to move it finer details, usually about 1 point at a time. So there I've set my type. I'm reasonably happy with the basic things, but now I want to play around with the type. If I go back to my T tool and then click back into my type and highlight it again, now I've constructed my palettes down this side, and if we click the little A symbol, this will bring up, I'll do it from the window menu, the character palette. And the thing about the character palette is it gives us a great deal of options. So first of all, from here we could change the typeface as an example. A little trick, and this works in most programs, is that if you highlight the name of the typeface and then you were to press V on the keyboard, it will pre-guess the first of the V's. So I could then hit return, and I've now changed the type to Verdana. If I then highlighted that again and I typed in Gil, then you can see it's pre-guessed that I want to go to Gil. So a common little shortcut that you can use. And as well as that, we can then choose the different weights of the face. So I can go for Gil Bold. Here's the type's size, and here's the type's leading. A nice little feature, a relatively undiscovered feature, is rather than manually changing the leading, which is the line spacing, so I want to bring the lines closer together, say I could type in 50 and there it's set 40 point Gil on 50 leading. But if you put your cursor, if you can just see it over where the two A's are, the little symbol, you get a little sideways arrow system. So that means if I was to click now and drag to the left, that decreases the leading, and click and drag to the right and that increases the leading. So sort of dynamic leading or dynamic capabilities just by moving these little sliders. Again, I can do the same with the size of the type. I could blow it up and make it smaller, and this I think is a beautiful feature. Here I could change the kerning, the space between the characters, so I could do that to increase them. Go to the left, tighten them up a bit, but characters are crashing into each other now. And then we have the same things here with vertical scaling, so I could then choose to scale the type up to make it slightly taller. Again, dragging to the left would decrease the scaling, and this changes the horizontal scaling. So same thing again, is I can then just scale that type out, but I want it to sort of sit neatly within that stretch of water. So there, I've played around with some of the type options. Various other ones of these, you can see that it gives you a little tooltip to tell you what they do, changing capitals, all that, superscript, subscript, and so on. So there's some of the options from the character palette. Changing back to my layer moving tool is that then allows me access to some of these options. These are what we call layer styles, and if I click and keep my finger down on here, is I then have options over other things I can add to the type. Say I want to add a drop shadow to the type, and it then pops up with this menu. Making sure you've got that one selected and not that one is that here it gives me access to all the shadow capabilities. So I could choose to have a lower opacity or a stronger opacity, just the strength of the shadow in the background. I could even then change the angle of the shadow to have it sitting in a different angle. I'm going to try it in that angle, so it's sort of fairly standard down and to the right, but it allows you, depending upon where your light source is, to move things around. I can then change the distance that it sets away from it. I think the default distance was fairly good actually, but then the spread of it, so I could make it a little wider spread, and then the actual size of it at the same time. I'm going to do something like that. Other options, if I click onto inner shadow, I could supply a shadow on the inside of the type. Don't quite fancy that one here, but we'll have a look at what the outer glow looks like. Not certain about that one either. Might potentially look good with a little stroke on it, so if I change the stroke color to a sort of a much darker color like that, I could even then take the opacity of that stroke down very slightly, so it's just put a little bit more emphasis on the outline. Again, you can see what it's like before or after just by switching some of these features off. I know the characters are a bit grainy, but it's only a low resolution picture, and of course the type is going to be rendered at the resolution of the picture. I could then play with other things. I could put a graduation through the type. I can click onto here and choose from the gallery of graduations, and there we go. That looks rather nice. Holidays from Hell, Switzerland 2005. So quite a lot of options that we have with type there. Bevel emboss can be nice sometimes if you play with some of these options, but in this particular case I quite like that, so that's what I'm going to stick with. Click OK, and there's my type done. And now on the layers palette it shows me all those little effects that I've applied: a drop shadow, an outer glow, and a gradient overlay that's running the graduation of the colors there. Now, of course, as I said earlier, this type is still editable as type, so I can still click back into the type, come on and do more warping, retype it, all those bits and pieces. But finally, I might want to be able to do some other effects with the type, and you'll see that when type is still editable type, it's really what we call a vector shape layer. So it means that quite a few features in Photoshop might not be available to you because the type is not an object layer, i.e. it's not made up of pixels. So one of the things that you can do from the layer menu is that if we go to the rasterize option, is we can then say we want to rasterize the type. This will then convert the type to being a working layer, just as pixels on a layer, so it will give us more options. But a good little trick is, before you rasterize a layer, I'm just going to increase the size of my layers palette. If I drag this layer over the new layer icon, then you'll see that it's duplicated that. So I could then switch off that duplicated layer, so I can keep that type as editable type, and then I could choose to rasterize just the top layer. So it means that I can then work with this as in a different way now, because it's treated differently in Photoshop's view. But if I completely ruin what I've done, I can always delete that and go back to my editable type version. Finally, close that and then just zoom out a little bit on there, and there we go. Switzerland 2005, Holiday from Hell.